Hello, everyone. Oh, yeah, Gloria's already saying hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar with Melinda this evening. If you can say hello in the chat box, that would be great, and say who you are and where you're from. I'm sure we're going to have people joining us from all over the world. So in the little chat box, yeah, look, hello from Scotland already. Hi, hello, hi, Gemma and Melinda.
Hello, Lucia.
Hi, Lucia.
Seeing if this I recognise coming up.
So welcome, everybody. My name is Gemma, and I'm the Business and Relationship Manager at Formula Botanica. If you don't know about us, you can go over to our website, formulabotanica.com, and check us and our courses out. You can also sign up to our free sample class at formulabotanica.com/sample class. We next open our courses for enrollment between July 3rd and 10th. So go and check those courses out and see if there's something that you want to sign up for. So this evening, we are joined by our friend Melinda again for another one of our fabulous
again.
It's Melinda again. And we're going to be talking about branding and how your brand is not your logo. And Melinda has quite a lot to say about that. She's also going to be chatting to you about her masterclass. So be sure to listen to what she's saying about all of those things. During the webinar, we'll also be taking Q&A from everybody. So just keep putting your questions in the chat box. When you go to the chat box, there's a little speech bubble. And if you click on that, next to it, there's a Q&A button, and if you ask your questions in there, it pops up to me more obviously, because there's quite a lot going on in the chat box, and sometimes I miss things, and then people get annoyed with me. So if you answer it if you ask it as a question, then I'm more likely to be able to see it. I think. Oh yeah, and there will be a replay. So everyone who has registered for this webinar will be sent a replay tomorrow at some point. I promise I will get to it. It might not be tomorrow morning, but it will be some point tomorrow. So without further ado, welcome, Melinda.
Thank you, Gemma. Lovely to be here again. And hello, everybody. They're from everywhere. They're piling in from everywhere. It's so exciting to be talking to people in so many far reaches of the world. Really is.
Yeah. Look at that. Washington State, England, Philadelphia, Dominican Republic. Paraguay.
Yeah.
Oh, Canada, France, Netherlands, North Carolina, Maryland, brilliant. Houston. Yeah, everyone's here.
We got the world covered.
We have. So we're talking about branding. And you said to me when I asked you what we should cover, you said you wanted to talk about how your logo is not your brand, and about building a strong brand differentiator. So I was thinking, let's start there. And if you would explain what you mean when you say strong brand differentiator, just so that people can understand what we're talking about, and why the word brand or branding is so important.
Okay. So any successful skincare business is made up of three basic elements. There are just three elements. And one is the value of your concept. And the second one is your connections. And the third one is your profitability. Okay, so that's it. If you've got all those three going, you're on the road to a successful business. And what happens often, if you come up with an idea, or you come up with a fabulous product, and you suddenly think, I've got to take this to market, or I've got to take this range to market. If you're a novice, then what people tend to do is they create a logo for themselves. It seems to be the first thing that they do. And they put it out there. And a lot of people come to me, my mentoring clients come to me and say, you know, I've got this great range of products. I've got this brand logo. This is it. Let's go for it. I've got a bit of money. I'm going to throw at it. Let's go for it. And the issue is that we're living, along with the fact that the audience for our products has grown so dramatically because of the internet, so has the competition. Yeah. So we're living in a world where we are saturated with products and product information. So when you're in that situation, you need to find all the time new and fresh ways of getting visibility, getting your product noticed, getting it out there. And that is sort of the first element of your brand. That is the first element of your brand differentiator.
Okay.
Now, the other that people tend to do, they're going to put up a website and they look at all the other beauty brands to see how people are describing their products, to get cues on what to say. And that's actually the worst possible thing you can do. Because if you look outside of the industry, and you have to appear to be fresh all the time. And if you look outside of the industry, you're going to get ideas that when you apply them to skincare are going to stand out. So that's the example of one simple way of differentiating yourself. Don't follow what everybody else is doing. I said that the first important thing is the value in your concept. So the value in your concept starts with your whys. And this is where your branding starts as well. It starts with, why am I doing this? What is my ethos behind this? What do I want this brand to say? Who is going to buy it and why are they going to buy it? And what do these products represent to me? And how can I communicate what they represent to other people? Yeah. Yep. Those are your branding. That's your branding toolkit. Those are all the things that you've got to address before you come up with your logo. And actually, if you're wise, before you even come up with your name. Who is it for? Why are they going to buy it? What is the emotion that I want this brand to touch on? It could be fear. You've got deodorants. You're going to smell if you don't buy it. It could be aspiration. This product will make you feel like $1 million. It will, even if you're not rich, it will make you feel rich. It could be therapy. These products will relax you, make you feel better, whatever. It could be we've talked about niching before, and I think niching is very much the word of the moment. I think that without a niche, you have got to throw an awful lot of money at a brand to make it work. So the first thing you do is establish what you're trying to do and why. Yeah. Once you've got that in place, you've then got to look at connections. Mm-hmm. That's the value behind your brand. Then you've got to look at connections. And connections are who's going to help you run this business, your distribution, how are you going to manage it? Those are the people around you. And they are also part of your brand, because how you treat the people that you work with is all part of the ethos of your company. And connections are also who your customers are. Who are you going to sell to? And how are you going to reach them? And obviously, it's easier if you start in an environment where you know the people that you're aiming at. You know where you can find communities of the people that you're aiming at. So once you've got that sorted out, once you've got those ideas sorted out, that's the point that you start saying, okay, so what name represents what I'm going to do? We'll talk a bit more about names later, but what name is right to, what should we call this? We've had a new baby here. What are we going to christen it? And then you also think about what colors represent my thoughts, my feelings, my ideas, the message that I want to communicate. So it's not about going online and buying a logo for $50. There is a whole science behind. It's the icing on the cake. The logo is the branding. The logo is the visual representation of all those elements that I just skimmed over. Each one is a dive deep proposition.
Okay. So in a way, it definitely makes sense to do all the other work first.
In a way,
it makes sense to do all the other work first then.
Absolutely. I mean, with any, yeah. Again, I get a lot of people coming to me, and I get frustrated because they've spent a lot of money and they're a quarter way through or halfway through, but it's not right.
Okay.
And, I want to take them right back. So actually, the very, very first thing you do is mindset. But you know that I'm a complete believer in mindset. So, the most important question here is, do I believe in what I'm doing? Do I believe in that this project is going to work? And are other people going to believe in my products? And once you've got that in your mind, so you have to absolutely believe in what you're doing. And it helps a lot for you to believe in it if you've spent time and energy doing the groundwork and not skimming over it. And, we see these brands out there and we think it's so easy, a few colors on a page, or, if you're vaguely creative and you just bung something up there and out with it and you think it's going to work, but you're up against, fierce international competition. And there are a lot of people getting this right these days. So, I mean, I think that in an essence is what branding is.
Yeah. You've frozen slightly. Oh, you're back.
You hear me? Oh,
yeah, I can hear you
lose
now,
me.
Yeah.
I was playing with my microphone wire.
Okay. So if we've talked about obviously how important it is, and the logo is just one element of the brand, and you need to set up your do your groundwork, get your whys and your whatnots in order. And so how do you know then whether you're choosing the right image?
Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of questions you should ask yourself about the image. And as I said, one thing is does it portray the message that you want to put out there? And the thing that you shouldn't do is make that decision yourself. So whatever you do right the way along the building process, you need to get it verified by outside people, by your ideal customers. So let's say that we have decided let's say we want to serve millennials.
Okay.
Because it's a buzzy market. We want to serve millennials. And we want to serve millennials. Let's take it further. So we're going to look at the millennials, and we're going to look at the ones we've got in mind, and we're going to think about where they buy their clothes, where they hang out, what their values are. I mean, identifying the ideal client again is a big science, but we're going to look into all those things. And then the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, if this product is right for millennials, how am I going to reach them? Now, if you're a millennial, if you're of the right age group and you hang out with them, your life is 10 times easier because you understand the language you use, you understand, what's hot and what's not hot. And you can just go out there. Now, if you for a woman who wants to do a man's range, there's big gaps in the men's market, huge gaps, but you need a group of men around you to tell you what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
You really do. So, and if you want to aim at rich women, you think you're going to create this wonderful luxury range that's superlative in every sense of the word, and you're going to charge a lot of money for it. From where you're sitting, that might look like an absolutely sound proposition. But until you actually talk to rich women and find out how they make their buying decisions, what makes them pick up one product over another product, you don't have that information. So I think quite often, again, as a startup and a passionate entrepreneur with a great product, notice I haven't mentioned products much here yet.
No.
But you tend to think, we're going to do this with it and that with it, and it's going to work. But we forget to ask the people that we actually want to buy it. And you can get some big surprises. You really can. I mean, on my business group, when my clients have their branding images and their choice of branding images, I always get them to put them up in my business group to get a consensus of opinion about them. So it's really good to build a focus group of some sort. It can be an online group. It can be and don't ask, I've said this before, you know, don't ask your mum or your Auntie Sue or your best friend. That's not your ideal client. You want absolutely cold, hard, constructive criticism, and you'll only get that from people that you don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Very, very true. I remember speaking to someone recently who said, I don't want any more input from my mum and dad because they just agree with me on everything, and I can't you know, do that anymore. I need you know, objective, constructively critical opinions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one example of something, because often also when we tend to overthink these things, and we're so focused on it that we miss the obvious. So just to give you one example, I had a client and we were considering names for her brand, and one of the names that came up was Dr. Ria, because her second name was Ria. And I thought that was great. I thought that would look brilliant. I mean, we'd been talking about it for weeks, and I thought it would be. And we put it on the group, and 2 people came up and said, well, every time I look at that, I see the word diarrhea. And it hadn't occurred to it. We'd looked at it for so long, it had not occurred to us. And that, you know, that was so valuable, because we could have just so easily gone down that road. Actually, on that point of wordsmithing, the other thing that you need to take into account in these days, in this day and age, is how a word will travel, or how a name will travel. So, for example, a preservative in your products in French, the word preservatives means condom.
Okay, yeah.
So, you know, I mean, there's all sorts of different definitions. So it's a good idea to look. You can always rename. Often you'll see chocolate bars and things that are completely renamed when they go into a foreign market, and that's perfectly feasible when you've got an established brand. But as much as you can do to protect the necessity for that, it's a good idea to do it. So check out the name, whatever name you pick, and your branding images are acceptable in the countries that you want to export to.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I had someone recently in one of in a Facebook group that I'm in. She had a business here, and it really took off, and someone wanted her to open some in other parts of the world, and she said, "This is the word I'm using. Does this mean anything offensive in anyone else's language?"
Yeah, absolutely. That happens. That can happen a lot. It's also, I mean, branding is also cultural. Mm-hmm. Imagery is cultural. So, for example, if I wrote a book in English and my publisher sold it to America, they completely changed the cover. And I never liked the American covers, but they always were it was always the right thing to do. I mean, they were much more obvious. The colors were much brighter. They were much more obvious, and the language that was used was completely different. So even if you're exporting to English speaking countries, or planning to, and I hope you guys are all planning to export, because that's really where the big bucks are these days, wherever you are, make use of this wonderful big world we've got. It's also a good idea to look at imagery, international imagery, and look at advertising and how advertising images work in different countries, to get a feel for that. So there are so many elements. You know, it's not just putting a label on a jar. And the other thing is, once you've answered your why, and once you've got a good sense of what your company represents and what its mission is and who it's talking to and who it's going to reach, your messaging comes into play. Your messaging is a very big part of your brand, in your social media, on your website, on your newsletters, and that has to be consistent. So any bit of paper that leaves or email that leaves your company needs to it needs to show the same feeling. So you might have a sign off. I mean, it might be a slightly, my word is woo woo, but actually this isn't particularly woo woo, but you know, you might sign off your emails in gratitude. You might sign off your emails with love. You might sign off them yours sincerely, you know, but each one of those it doesn't just represent you as a person, it represents your company. And those sort of like sign-offs, I mean, you can have a fun one, and sign-offs, cheers is a favorite one of mine, but words are very, very powerful. So you need to be careful how you use them, and use them to your advantage.
Okay.
So just about, I went on, I've just taken on a copyright of something that I would do. And one of the really impressive was I went on her website, and the first thing it said was, "Oh, hello." And I felt like I'd walked into, but it was wonderful because I actually felt like I'd walked into her living room. It was just this sort of friendly hi, but it wasn't, it wasn't the same old thing. It was unassuming. It was slightly surprising, but I really felt immediately that I liked this person. So your words, the words that you use, are part of your brand. All of this comes under branding.
I think that's really important to note. And I think as well, one of the things I've seen some examples recently where people really got imagery wrong, and I'm not going to talk about names and stuff because that's not appropriate here. And there was backlash against it. And I would just encourage people to do what Melinda said and to check, like make sure there's some sort of diversity amongst the people that you're asking, because like Melinda said, what may be okay in the UK might not be okay in the US, might not be okay in India, might not be okay in Canada, might not be okay in Japan. And unless you start to sort of just have a good general look around, the chances are that you could get some comeback of choosing incorrect imagery. So I've seen a big person get it wrong recently, and it caused a problem for them. So just, take care in choosing those images.
The other thing that's actually really important is to understand, if you want to sell to retail, to understand that retailers treat their skincare in the same way that they treat fashion. So if you go into an up-level, upmarket store, whilst they will have a few of the sort of the Cliniques and the L'Oreals or whatever, which don't change very much from season to season, the younger brands and the newer brands, they are often selecting on the basis of their packaging and how that packaging fits in with an overall image that they want to create for their store. Okay, so it might be one season that it's full of flowers. It might be one season that it's all white and black. It might be one season that it's sort of exotic. So if you have if your actual logo is relatively simple and it hasn't got masses of color and it's not, it doesn't stand too much on its own, you could actually change your image from time to time, providing that logo remains that identified. You could actually keep up with trends, identify trends and keep up with them and change them from time to time to stay fresh and to fit in. Because staying fresh, everything is going at such a speed now. It's just really exciting. But I mean, the whole environment for sales is changing so dramatically that we need to be constantly changing and constantly fresh. So that's one way to do it. Keep your actual physical logo simple. Make sure it's not too big, so that it fits on your smallest products. If it's got lots of words. I know that, I think it was somebody on my last masterclass pointed out that a logo shouldn't appear in a circle because that's not, I was going to say kung fu, but that's not the word I'm looking for. What's the word? What's the word when you do,
feng shui?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, it's not feng shui because it's closing you off.
Okay.
So I mean, also it's you can do worse than looking at traditional and historic symbols and because each of those African images, for example, if you look through a book of symbols of African tribes, each thing has a spiritual and a social meaning. So you can have huge fun with that. Once you've decided who you are, the next thing is you've got to choose your dress. But you can have a lot of fun with that. I mean, it's a big creative exercise. Look, my overriding advice is that you should go to a proper branding agency, and one that understands skincare. That I'll say that once. But I know that some people want to save money on this. It's actually the last thing you should try and save money on, because it is so important that you get it right.
We have got a couple of questions coming in, so
sure.
I'll just mention the first one from Ellie. She said, this is quite an interesting question, actually. I coined a term for a treatment and name of my product line, Skin Probiotics, 4 to 5 years ago, but it now has become a category, and millions of searches come up in Google, and everyone is saying to pick a different name.
Sorry, have you actually trademarked that name?
Well, it's interesting because I was going to say, she hasn't said if she's trademarked it, so maybe Ellie, you could let us know. But it's the first thing that popped into my head, actually, when I read that, trademarks, because I would hazard a guess that if it's just Skin Probiotics, that someone may have trademarked that already. Yeah. Is that what you were going to say, Melinda?
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's not been trademarked, or if you've trademarked it, just the fact that people are using it, I would actually really use that to my advantage, in the fact that you were the first that came up with it. So you were the original. I mean, you can make all sorts of claims around that if you've got the trademark. If you haven't got the trademark, you're one of the, you should have done that. And perhaps, given that you're creative and that you're clearly good at coming up with nailing the name, perhaps then you should come up with another description.
Okay. Yeah,
I mean, it's like bath bombs. It's like, so she's
replied and she said, yes, trademark, not registered.
How can you have a trademark that's not registered?
I don't know.
It's either trademarked or it's not.
Not. You have to have a registered trademark, yeah.
Yeah.
Not registered for use, or maybe you can let us know, Ellie, if it is trademarked or not.
Ellie, if it's trademarked and you've got the chance to register it, register it. Don't think about changing it. Register it and do a great big campaign about the fact that you were the originals. Yeah?
Yeah, and also if people are searching for it in Google and it's a popular term, then that is going to be, you're going to be in SEO heaven. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Then Andrea has asked another question. In the current market, what works best? A traditional, more busy logo, or a minimalist contemporary look?
Again, I think it's you see what you're doing there is, I mean, what is your brand saying? You're working back to front there. So do you have a brand that that feels traditional, that you want to feel traditional, that you want to feel solid? Or do you have a what was the second option he gave?
Like a minimalist kind of.
Yeah, or do you want to appear young, a minimalist? And again, before deciding that, you've got to know who your customer is, where they hang out, what brands they buy, what the other stuff they buy looks like. So this is what I mean by thinking that it's a simple question. It's not a simple question. It needs a lot of back thought behind it.
Yeah.
And a lot of research.
It does. Melissa has said, Melinda, would you recommend conducting focus groups?
Yes, I would, absolutely. But I would try and get them together from people you don't know rather than people you do know, because people you don't know are completely unbiased. Even if you form a group, I mean, it depends what it's about. If you're part of my Facebook business group, you can be free to ask questions on there and see what everybody says on there. But actually, ideally, I would go outside of the skincare world, because the other big issue that we have is we hang out in skincare communities and we find it quite hard to realize that not everybody is sort of fascinated by pH balances and what preservative is natural and what isn't. We make, this becomes our world, and we make assumptions based on the people around us. So it's always a really good idea, both for your creativity and for the information that you want to gather, to regularly put yourself in environments and amongst people that you wouldn't normally be with. I had a really interesting example of this. I found myself in London a couple of weeks ago, and I was taken to a vegan restaurant in Stoke Newington. Oh. And there were all these 20-somethings, incredibly trendy, intelligencer. You know what I'm trying to say? It sort of slightly intellectual, and they all look the same, and it really shook me up. I mean, it was like I walked into a sort of alien ship, because I live in a field in France, and it's such a long time since I've been sort of urban and moved around in different circles. And those people were all ideal customers for someone, and there's a huge movement. Because from where I am, my immediate association with vegan, is something a little hippie. I mean, I know it's not anymore. I have a granddaughter who's vegan, but it's really cool. It's now gone. It's dropped all the furry bits, and it's actually become very streamlined and cool. And that was interesting to me. So again, I think we've talked about this before. If you're heading for an anti-aging market, you will have misconceptions about what people my age want. Yeah, I'm definitely the anti-aging market. You will have total misconceptions about how we run our lives, what books we read, what television programs. You will not know. So you need to put yourself out there and talk to people, and you will get such a surprise.
Indeed you shall.
And it will keep you, but it keeps you fresh, because we get stale. We don't even notice it in ourselves.
Yeah, and definitely we did a podcast about the trends in cosmetics when we went recently, and we talked about that, like if you think that you found a niche, you want to make skincare, I don't know, for pet owners or gardeners, like Melinda wanted to do soap for gardeners, didn't you, Melinda, when you had your soaps? Go and talk to those people, because if you are not in that niche, you, like Melinda's saying, might not know the things exactly that they want, or the little kind of nuances of things. So we were talking about developing like skincare or hair care for surfers or curlers, or what you would need to find out. You would need to find out exactly what they're looking for, because then you can make and design something super savvy. Okay, Andrea's asked another question about a logo, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because we can talk about this particular topic for a long time, but she said there's been a lot of discussion lately on using the word organic or natural on a logo. What is your view on this?
Well, if it's not organic or certified organic, then you shouldn't be using it.
Yeah. Also, the word natural is not defined. There's no kind of legal or regulatory definition of it.
No.
So
look, it's better than nothing, but there are other ways that you could get that message out there. I mean, things like wild crafted, or there's other terminology. See, this is what I mean. You look in the industry, what's everybody saying? Or they're saying it's natural or it's organic. Well, there's words like wild. There's all sorts of words that mean that are actually far more emotive and far more interesting. I noticed, I think I was reading a blog today, and someone, instead of saying homemade, had come up with a brand called Self-Made, which I thought was brilliant. For it was a 19-year-old, and it was for millennials, but Self-Made touches on how the product's made, and it touches on the aspirations of the person. of the customer, and it touches on independence. There's so many fascinating things around words and names. So natural and organic have both been done to death. I challenge you to come up with something new.
And also, I would just have a listen to the podcast that Lorraine and I did on what does natural skincare mean, and also why using 100% natural claims can cause you issues, because the word natural is, like I said, it's not defined or regulated in any way, and you have to define what natural means to you, because it means such different things to different people. So personally, it's something I would not use. I go with Melinda, what Melinda's saying. There's a lot better ways of communicating that in your imagery, or using other types of words.
It's the imagery. The imagery can talk now. You can use. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing that you can't make claims about a product.
No,
but you can actually show somebody relaxing in a bath, or somebody with problem skin, and how that looks after they've used the cream. You can show it without saying anything.
Yeah.
You can show it. There's just you have to come at everything from outside the box, rather than being pulled into this stream of what everybody else is doing. And that is brand differentiation. That answers your first question.
Yeah, I think personally, I think competitor analysis is useful, but just because you can see what's there, but you want to then not be doing that. That is how then you differentiate what you're doing. Well, I've always been a bit of a maverick like that. So yes, I'll check that somebody's not done what I'm trying to do before. Yeah, exactly.
But the whole market research thing, I think knowing what age groups will spend on the financial side, which we're not touching on this, but I think that's where your market research needs to come in.
Demographics, pricing. Yeah, super important. And you want to have a look at what people who are doing similar products to you are pricing at, because you can really get yourself into hot water if it's not done properly. But that's a topic for a whole other webinar.
Get your costings right, and then see how much margin you've got to play with for your branding. Positioning.
So Cheyenne has asked a question saying, look for international imagery. I think the point that we were trying to make is just have a look that your imagery is not offensive or inappropriate or tricky in other cultures, especially if you're wanting to sell your products there. Or if, like the examples that Melinda gave, you could, if it's just a slightly different market, then you could easily adapt the name or something. But you don't want to go for something that's got very glaring issues, because then it's going to be difficult to...
I mean, this isn't just in your branding; it's also in your product formulation. So some cultures, Eastern cultures, highly value white skin, and they'll do anything to protect their skin from getting burnt and from the sun, because tan skin is ugly, whereas other cultures look for that glow. So it's really about looking at the market and deciding what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think, just to clear up, I don't think Melinda is saying that she thinks tan skin is ugly. I think she was saying it from other some other cultures' perspectives.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I can't wait for the sun to come out. No, I mean, all these things. Look, the point is, if you're creative, and I imagine that because you're making these formulas and because you're creating these wonderful products that most of you are, I want you to stretch your creativity and look at all these into your brand. That's really what I want you to do, because this is really exciting stuff. Differentiating, messaging, imagery. This is as creative as you can get. It really is. It's brilliant, brilliant stuff. And marketing is hugely creative as well. So if you can make the products, you can do all this stuff. But just go into it not being scared of it. Go into it with an idea that you want to do it because it's fabulous.
I just wanted to, before I get onto some of the other questions, which are interesting, I just wanted you to talk. I mentioned in the beginning of the webinar that you're going to talk a little bit about your mastermind group and your masterclass.
Masterclass, yeah.
I want to get an understanding if these sort of issues are covered there and if people get a chance to discuss these amongst in a group.
Yeah, absolutely. I run the masterclass once a year, and it's the only group course I do. And I love it. It is huge fun. And the other times that we've done it, we've had a great bunch of women who've, well, you know, from the Formula Botanica Forum, the value of the peer group thing. But I cover, it's a potted version of my 16-week. It's everything my 16-week offers, except you don't get my full attention. You don't get me for an hour. So it covers, it starts off with mindset. It covers ideal customer identification. It covers branding. It covers range creation, how you're going to get it produced, legal compliance, how you're going to cost it. There's 12 modules. Distribution, social media, getting your website together. I mean, it's a huge amount of information. Cash flow, your overall business strategy, finding investment. And I've also got interviews, recorded interviews with industry experts like cosmetic brand agencies, agency, I don't want to give false things. They're a major ex-supermarket buyer, investments, media specialist. So there is tons. I mean, it's the way. I try to get everything I know down into this course, and it runs over 6 months. Every 2 weeks there is a webinar. There is a Facebook group. There'll be question and answer sessions. You get in-depth modules, workbooks to work on, and you also get a one-to-one 1 hour call with me. So it's from where I'm sitting, it is phenomenal value. But more important than that, it will actually ensure that you are starting on the right foot. You will waste, I can guarantee you will waste far more money than this course costs if you haven't got the background and you're stumbling into this completely new. It primes you for the whole, every step of the way. And that's the program. And there's a Formula Botanica discount.
There is. I will be displaying the offer towards the end of the webinar.
Okay. And the doors are open for that. It starts on the 12th of June. And I'm closing the doors on the 5th of June. So if people want to sign up, they should do it sooner rather than later on that one.
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, I will be displaying the offer in the little offers box, which is on your little dashboard near the chat box, so that you'll be able to see that towards the end of the webinar. Melinda's offering quite a generous discount for Formula Botanica students. There's a great question here. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to sort of put questions forward that's asking Melinda's opinion on specific brand names, because that's not really the purpose of this webinar. But someone has asked about choosing colors that are gender neutral on logos and branding, especially if they're wanting to have like a gender neutral range. And I think that's quite an interesting question, because we saw it in cosmetics that's becoming more and more of a trend. I hate to use the word trend because it's probably a bit more than a trend.
Well, that's really, really interesting, because to me, the whole world is becoming gender neutral along colors. So what might have been, where pink might not have been acceptable for a boy some time ago, I think it's, you know, certain shades of pink are totally acceptable nowadays, but that depends on the age group. Again, we've got to get to this, we've got to start with this ideal customer. So yes, I mean, look, colors. So what would you call gender? Grey, navy? What would you go for? You'd go for sophisticated colors.
Yeah, the products that I've had a look at that are marketed as being gender neutral or non-binary or any of the other various terms for all humans tend to be either like dark colors, very light colors or a gray.
Yes.
Because they're not, those
mean,
colors aren't traditionally attached to male or female. And obviously there's a big drive to kind of move away from those opposites and binaries. But the products that tend to be out there, tend to have colors that are dark, light, or gray.
I really do think that rather than attempt to make it gender neutral, you should look at who your ideal client is, who your ideal customer is, and work with that, which is why it's kind of important to know what other brands they buy and what fashion shops they go to get a feel of color. I mean, there's things like blue. I mean, I use a bright blue, and blue is not my favorite color, but bright blue represents security. It's kind of safety, and it's trust. So, you know, there are a lot of reasons behind this. Is where branding agencies become really, really helpful, because there are a lot of messages that go beyond gender neutral that go with the colors that you're going to choose. So again, once you have to decide on the emotion, who the ideal client is, and determine what you're trying to communicate before you choose your color.
Okay, that's good advice there. Question from Robin. I think Robin's next. Many of us begin with a product, then a name, and then a logo, especially those of us who started out as a hobby, like myself. What's the best way to move forward with branding our business using what has already been created as far as a logo and a name?
Okay, so I got to leave you to that, because when somebody comes to me with a logo and a name and a brand, wanting to work with me, I will look at them, and if I like them, I'll work with them, and if I don't, I won't work with them, because I can't take a mess. I don't want to be involved taking something that I don't want to be involved taking something that I think is you know, some of my clients have gone back to branding agencies. They might have already spent a fortune, but they've gone back to branding agencies because they didn't do the right research when they chose the name. I'm not saying you can't get it right. Of course you can get it right. If you're hugely creative, you know, you might just hit it. You really might. But personally, I'm not in the business of rescuing lousy brand images.
I think what might be useful, Robin, is to perhaps go and do the groundwork again and do your whys, wherefores, map it all out, and see if your existing logo and names actually match those values and the kind of things that you've discovered as you've gone.
That is through. A much more constructive way of putting it, Gemma. Thank you for that. Rather than me, don't want to know.
don't want to do that. Because that might be useful. And actually, I've recorded almost 4 podcast episodes on branding, and those will be released, fingers crossed, shortly. So you'll be able to hear some tips from branding experts, and then talk to quite a successful brand who has rebranded. And you can decide whether you want to go through that process or not. And I guess it also depends on how well known your brand is now. So if it's not really very well known and you're not really, you know, making enough money to kind of, you know, keep yourself afloat, then maybe it's worth changing it at the early stages.
Yeah. That's the point. That's the point. It's the money that gets wasted. And, you know, as I say, you could have got it right, but you need to do that. Gemma nailed it. You need to do the back work to establish whether you have got it right. And also, if it's been going, is it selling? You know?
Yeah, is it selling? If it's still in the hobby phase, then you've got nothing to lose, I guess, from changing it.
Depends what you spent on it.
Yeah. Or if you like it, that's the other thing. Okay, so sorry, someone has asked me to remind them what your Facebook group is again, Melinda. Is it Melinda's Business Mastermind?
Yes. Yes, and you're all welcome. Business Mastermind.
If you search for it on Facebook, you'll find it, Melinda's Business Mastermind. Okay, so next question. When creating a product line, how important is it to consider the I think maybe
the demographic.
Yeah. Let me just, is that a word? I'm not sure. Maybe it's when creating a product line, how important is it to consider the demographic if we are taking skincare? Example, in India, turmeric, fenugreek has traditional attachment.
The demographic is always important.
Yeah.
But it's about the words. So you tailor the message. If you want to put across that you've put traditional things, the way you present the message needs to talk to the demographic that you're talking to. You can tell them the same thing, but the language is different. And the imagery is probably different as well.
Yeah. So for instance, like in the UK, turmeric is quite a big thing. You know, it's been an on-trend ingredient for quite some time. So, you know, if you're making your product for Indian audiences, they're obviously going to understand that because it's been used for thousands of years. And in the UK, if it's packaged slightly different or the message is packaged slightly differently, people are still going to get it because turmeric is quite well known, as well as actually some other Indian herbs like ashwagandha and things like that. But yeah, just do your research and the market will guide you. Oh, okay. My registered trademark is being used by another brand all of a sudden. I don't have a large following yet. Should I consider brand name change, as they have stopped using the name in association with their products, but are still using the name for their blog?
Well, how can they do that? How can they use the name for the blog?
That's a legal issue there, I would imagine. Yeah. And you would need to consult a lawyer about that. I was talking to someone about
if you've gone to the trouble of registering a trademark, you shouldn't consider for a minute allowing somebody else to frighten you out of the market or to get away, you know, to stop using it, because you've already made a commitment to that name. And it's yours, and you need to fight your corner on that. And I don't believe people should ever put energy into fighting corners unnecessarily, but your name is a really important issue.
Yeah.
So why are you feeling, what concerns me more there is, why are you allowing them to bully you into even considering backing away from your own name? That's a bigger problem.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, obviously trademark issues can be quite complicated. We were speaking with a lawyer about some trademark issues this week. And obviously it is quite complicated, and we can't address that here because neither of us are lawyers. So I'd recommend seeking some legal advice about that, because like Melinda said, they probably shouldn't be doing that. And maybe you already have, I'm not sure, but it sounds like quite a complex issue. For the people asking about how would I go about finding a company that will help me with branding, it's quite difficult for me to say if I don't know where you are in the world. But I have a couple of people I know in the UK. But I would recommend posting in Melinda's Facebook group, in our Facebook groups, if you're a student in the online classroom, if you're not in our Skincare Entrepreneur Mastermind group, because you'll find quite a few people out there who can make recommendations.
Yeah. Actually,
yeah,
I was just going to say, we do, I'm not going to give her name here, but we do work with a company that are specialist cosmetic branders, and they are going to be very active in the masterclass, because I'm doing an interview with them, and they do have special offers. But it's what you want to spend, really, because a good branding agency, you need some guidance on, first of all, you need to look at their work, and you need to like and identify with their work. And then the second thing is price, because some agencies will charge you an absolute fortune, and some will be far too cheap. You're looking at the time, Gemma.
Yeah, I am, and I'm just telling everyone that I've put the offer live. So the offer for the discount that Melinda's offering on her masterclass is live. And just to echo what Melinda is saying, you know, don't be afraid to ask whoever you want to work with or whoever you're thinking of working with lots of questions. because you can get, you know, ask for their work, ask for examples. If they say they've worked with, you know, natural and organic skincare brands, ask for evidence of that. Look at they should come with their portfolio anyway.
I mean, it is an area where you should get specialist help. So, a basic branding agency is not going to necessarily have what it takes to do skincare work. It's the same with PR. You know, you kind of need a specialist agency to really get the most out of a brand. I believe, anyway.
Yeah. Just one last question. Should we do one last question? Oh, there's quite a few. There's loads of questions that have come through, but I'm not going to be able to cover them all. But where was the next one? From Wanda, my brand name is simple, logo is fairly simple, and I get loads of praise for my packaging. How do I get or find the right target audience? Okay, target audience stuff is something separate to this webinar. But again, if you post in our Facebook groups, either Facebook group, you'll get information there on target audience. Someone is asking you, Melinda, just to repeat the dates that your masterclasses, that your group is open for enrollment.
Oh, it's open now until the 5th of June.
Okay, so now until the 5th of June.
Yeah.
Please repeat the date. Yeah, now until the 5th of June. Okay. And
there is a payment, a take it easy payment plan on there as well. So
Astrid was just sharing her wisdom about finding a visual communicator. She became a fabulous brand manager and brand policewoman. So that's another way if you don't want to use a branding agency. We can't give specific information on how to advertise things. But again, if you post in our different Facebook groups, you're going to get a lot of advice and input in there, because there's a lot of people that have got experience with these things in the various groups. I think that's probably all we have time for.
I mean,
now.
You know, I think the type of questions that are coming up kind of echo what I'm saying about why people need the program, because it's like, where do you start? What do I need to do? How important are these issues? And it's about starting absolutely from the base and knowing the route that you need to go on. And that's why I put the program together, because otherwise you're grabbing at bits of this and you're doing it in the wrong order, and you're going to end up wasting a lot of time and money.
I'm just going to put another link to Melinda's masterclass in the group, because I know you're wanting to find out more about it. Will there be a masterclass later this year? No, there won't be, unfortunately.
No, there won't.
Because it's
once a year.
Yeah. Just put it again. That is obviously the link without the discount, though. So
it's got the link should have, if it's / Formula Botanica, got the discount.
Yeah, on it. in the offers section of the webinar, at the top, next to the chat button, there should be one that says offers. You will be able to see the link for the one with the discount. Let me actually put that proper link up in the chat box. Someone was just asking about an NDA. Is it common to ask people to sign an NDA when hiring a brand strategist?
You can do. I don't want to work with people I can't trust. And also, if they took your idea, it would be more, you've got to gauge it. If you offer someone an NDA, they will sign it. They will sign it. So if you're feeling nervous about it, do it. But the fact is that for an agency, it's more than their reputation. If their reputation is worth, if they ripped you off in this day of social media, it would be suicide for them. So you'll be pretty safe. I mean, and you've got to be a little careful, because Yeah, but you can't protect a formula in really. You know, how are you going to say they've used your pot of cream if, you know, that formula, it's a minefield.
It is tricky. I mean, it is quite good practice to use a standard NDA. So you know that you have some level of protection. I mean, that's what I think, going on my experience. But like Melinda said, it is a minefield area, and then it depends what's in your NDA anyway. So
and whether you've got the resources to take it to court if somebody does anything about it.
Exactly.
That's
the other issue. Yeah. Have you got the financial backing to be able to pursue it in court? Because we all know that is a costly exercise. Right. I think that's everything. People are asking about trademarks. We're going to be releasing a blog on trademarks, and you can get some advice about that in that blog. And there will also be a contact.
Sorry, let me answer this. Adina's saying if she was to take the best out of this webinar in a few words, if her logo is not my brand, what would it be? Your logo would be your representational image to the world. It would be the image of your total business presented to the world in image form. Sorry, I'll go away now.
No. There you go. You answered another question. I think if you're interested in starting an organic skincare range, then you need to head over to formulabotanica.com and have a look at our blog and our courses. That covers all of the basics. You'll find a lot of information in there, and also take our sample class, which is formulabotanica.com/sample class. Okay,
the link that you've actually just given in the messages is not. It doesn't have the discount on it,
doesn't it?
The discount, no.
No, there it is. Look, can you see /Formula Botanica?
Oh, okay.
Can you see? I put the other one up.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So there's two. Sorry, the first one I put up didn't have the discount. The second one does have the discount. That one that says Skincare Business Masterclass.com/Formula Botanica, and then it's also displayed in the offers section, and it will also be displayed in the replay as well. And then obviously you can contact us for the link if you need it and you haven't been able to find it. But there's definitely not going to be another masterclass this year. This is the only intake that Melinda is having. I just want to make that clear because I saw the question come up again, I think. Okay, I think that's everything that we're going to have time for, everybody. So I just want to say thank you to Melinda for joining us again.
Thank you for having me again.
Always a pleasure. Melinda's going to be speaking at our conference this year on some very interesting topic. And we're also going to be having a Q&A session with her and some other people, which you can find the details of on our conference web pages, in case you're interested in attending and meeting Melinda in person. I can assure you it's an experience.
What have I done to deserve this?
No, it's a lovely experience. Yeah, so there will be a replay, obviously, so that comes out at some point tomorrow. And just thank you, everybody, for joining and for listening and taking time out of your evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you all.
Yes. And we'll see you again soon. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.